The show The Real Ghostbusters got turned into because of network interference pales so much in comparison to the well-written show it had previously been. It's a farce and it never should have happened. After The Real Ghostbusters show was a proven success, what else would the network do but try to fix it? I love how stupid people are sometimes. In 1987, ABC hired the consultant firm Q5, aka a bunch of dumbasses with degrees.
She began explaining what we weren't doing right, and I thought they had done some research, like put a bunch of kids in a room and showing them the TV shows, and the kids reacted a certain way. But then when I discovered that, in fact, no, they just had this platonic idea of what a kids' TV show was going to be, I went nuts.
That's right. This Q5 agency came in with their list of how to fix the Real Ghostbusters based on nothing, apparently.
We had the #1 show in Saturday morning. We were getting killer ratings, killer reviews. Everyone loved us. So having the most successful show on the air, it therefore behooves the network to try and fix it. They went out and hired consultants to come in and give us guidance on what kids wanted to see in network television shows. My assumption was that given that the show was working, they probably wanted to see what we were doing, just more of it. No, we were told. What they wanted to see was kids. The kids want to see kids on television.
I've talked about this a little when I brought up Ninja Turtles adding a stupid kid, and it's true here too. I never wanted to see kids in my shows!
We're the Junior Ghostbusters, and we're not afraid of no ghost.
So enter the Junior Ghostbusters, deemed necessary by complete assholes. They only actually ever showed up a couple of times, but I still have memories of being rather unimpressed upon seeing them.
Sorry, Slimer. I thought you were a ghost. Oh, right, you are a ghost.
They even saved the Ghostbusters from one of the show's strongest villains, the Boogeyman. Now, it's true, kids did help the Ghostbusters in the original story with the Boogeyman, but there was a stronger point with that. They were the kids that were being terrorized by him, and they managed to overcome their fear briefly and did something within reason, throwing marbles at him. The Junior Ghostbusters, however, while not being as annoying as Zack from Ninja Turtles, still came in with too much importance and would take up too much airtime of their episodes.
When I was a kid, I loved reading about Batman. Robin was a pain in the butt because I could become Batman someday. But Robin was my own age, and I couldn't do those things.
But stupid little additions like this were really the least of the problems imposed by these Q5 morons. Some of these changes they wanted made, Joe Straczynski flat out called sexist and racist, and with good reason.
Well, we think that the characters should all have clearly defined roles. Think of it as a body. That Peter is the mouth. Okay, I can buy that one. Ray, the mechanic, is the hands. Alright, I'm okay with that one too. Egon is the brains. Perfect, I got no problem with that. Winston, our only black character, was the driver. Hang on. Hold the bus a second. So these guys, the white guys, have all the really smart roles and making the one black guy into the driver? Show me a research on that one. Which of course they couldn't provide.
I love what bullshit this was. The original version of the show had no problems with their definement as characters. They were actually defined very well in that aspect, and you knew what their roles were. And guess what? They pretty much all took turns driving. But if you pay attention after the change, yep, it's pretty much always Winston driving. Thanks shit, Winston's defined fine now. That good old character trait of driving. I feel like he's so much more defined now that he doesn't have good lines and drives all the time. Thanks. It's really sad because Winston gets so few moments to shine once the series changed. Really, out of the whole Buster Jones run of the character, I can only think of one particularly funny moment.
You've been to Egypt?
Well, not in this lifetime, but in a past life, I was Cleopatra, you know. Those locust plagues were always so annoying after the seasonal floods.
Uh-huh.
Yup. That's all I've got for 'em. And the reason that one's particularly funny is because of just how asinine Janine's "I used to be Cleopatra" spiel was beforehand. Speaking of, let's talk Janine, the character these Q5 twits messed up the most. The real Ghostbusters version of Janine was awesome. She was a strong character who could stand up to the Ghostbusters, would save their butts on occasion, and would have some awesome snarky lines.
Now, Janine, remember, when I yank on the rope...
Skip it. I've seen Poltergeist. I'd go, but I've got this small problem. I'm alive. Ready? Good.
Janine's completely wrong. Why is she completely wrong? First off, she needs to be more nurturing. She needs to be more of a mother character, a mother to the boys who were there at the firehouse. Put her in more dress-like outfits, skirts and blouses, not pants. Make her more nurturing looking. Change her glasses, because children, they said, are frightened by sharp objects. There should therefore be round glasses, not pointed glasses.
You know, when I was watching this show about ghosts, the thing that really scared me was the pointy glasses. These stupid changes resulted in basically a personality ectomy for Janine. She became very bland with just a nice attitude about everything.
Ghostbusters Central. Okay, calm down, sir. Now, what's the address? They'll be there in 2 minutes. Slimer, what's wrong?
Bad guys! Bad guys!
What bad guys? Mr. Peck, what are you doing here?
Oh no, Slimer!
There was no more of the spunk or wit that had really brought the character to life. They also recast Janine's voice to cast Susie, who is a very talented voice actor and did what was asked of her in this case, but I hate this soft, demure voice coming out of Janine. The Brooklyn accent helped give her personality and gave the show a little more of that New York flavor. It even annoys me that they took the job away from Laura Summer just to make this change because she didn't even audition for Janine doing the Brooklyn accent.
They didn't have me do the New York accent. I just talked as myself. It was just very sweet. And then a few weeks later, I got the job. And then the first day of shooting, they said to me, of recording, "Can you do a New York accent?" And I said, "Can I do a New York accent?" Coming from Queens, of course.
So she was perfectly capable of doing a similar type of voice they were asking for, but I get the feeling these idiots who were forcing the changes were like, Laura Summer equals Brooklyn accent, so she must be replaced. And get this, apparently notes on the character's changes were actually described as generally less harsh and slutty. Yeah, shorter skirt equals slutty. So much fuck you, Q fuck. Q5 stated these changes for Janine were a necessity because she wasn't working with the female audience. Of course, since they hadn't done any actual research, they arrived at this conclusion through magic and just decide girls hate female characters that have too much personality and don't fall into the little cliche female character role. I'm sure any girls watching the show were totally aghast when that dreadful woman did awful things like talk back to the men. I'm sure at some point Q5 pitched Janine breastfeeding the Ghostbusters and probably giving birth to them as well. At the very least, I can say Janine still got to be a Ghostbuster on occasion, but she was a completely boring character at this point.
And they laid this panoply out in front of me with all their PhDs and said, this will save the show. Save from what? I had no idea, but they saved the show. And I said no. No to point A, no to point Z, all the points in between, no. If you do these things, I'm leaving.
And losing Joe Straczynski was pretty much one of the nails in the coffin for the show. As the story editor, he was the one who kept the high-quality writing up with all the scripts, but now that was being interfered with, and he couldn't stand to stay on. Which is understandable, and you can see in his interviews about it that it still upsets him to this day.
I'm already getting amped up over all this.
Which I can understand because it still upsets me too, writing about it and talking about it. The fact he still gets heated about it, though, also shows how much passion he did have for it originally, and how stupid the network was for allowing these blithering idiots to come in and screw with the show's creative process. Len Jansen and Chuck Menville took over as the story editors after Straczynski had left. Now, they were the ones who were hired first to story edit the series, but they weren't aware of the syndicated package that had to be done.
We began with the 13 network episodes and the 65 syndicated episodes simultaneously, and they balked at that amount of work, as any sane person would. So we're just going to do our episodes, and they needed someone to come in to story edit the 65 plus a certain number of the 13.
Len Jansen and Chuck Menville, based on their episodes in the first season, were capable of better than what the show turned into, but they seemed to be a little more accepting of the new network mandates.
And we were pretty much hogtied in a lot of ways by broadcast standards. We aimed the network show more towards kids, and I think the off-network was a little more adult in the storylines. I don't think they would ever do this story on the off-network show. It's too young.
However, Len Jansen didn't seem to like all these changes either.
Well, we saw the new Janine there.
You know, I liked her the other way. It kind of gave her a little edge.
Right.
And now she's, she looks like typical housewife. Nothing against housewives, but Janine's character was kind of an edgy Brooklynite, you know.
Right.
And that's what made her different.
Those shows that were done without my participation, I didn't watch. It was too painful to see the show being that thoroughly decimated.
Now, after the ratings dropped, surprise! ABC asked and even begged Joe Straczynski to come back, which he did to write a few more shows, which were pretty much the highlights of the second version of the show, but unfortunately the damage was done and it would never get back to where it was. Straczynski would try though, and was very adamant about fixing Janine so she could revert back to the strong female character she originally was.
I said, can I run a truck over the Junior Ghostbusters? No, you can't run a truck over them, but if you don't want to write them, you don't have to. Good. I will come back on the condition that I can write the show the way that I want to write it, the way that it should have been written in the first place, and I restore Janine to the character that she was.
This was quite interesting for a cartoon show at the time to actually acknowledge these changes to a character like this, and I certainly like what Straczynski tried to do here. It's just that he was basically trying to push a boulder up a hill at this point, and every time he left, the boulder rolled right back down. The fake Real Ghostbusters did exactly what the first version of the show didn't. It was dumbed down for kids and feels like any script trying to rise above that during this incarnation was still being drugged down.
That Necronomicon does not exist. It was a fictional book. H.P. Lovecraft created it. I turned the script in, and ABC Broadcast Standards and Practices said, you can't reference this is an occult book. So we'll know it does exist. Yes, it does exist. We know it exists. Then show me a copy of it. And they dug in their heels and said that this book exists, even though I knew it didn't. We ended up having to cut the reference out, and it became the book that cannot be named.
My PKE meter said something very powerful was once in here. What was it?
It was a thing called the Nameless Book.
It must have had a name.
No, that's what it was called, the Nameless Book.
Great.
Hey, listen to this. From Monday to Friday, the New York Public Library presents the Necronomicon! H.P. Lovecraft and others wrote a whole series of horror stories based on it.
Janine's design after the switch was in constant flux, with her even adopting her Ghostbusters 2 look after the second movie had come out. And oddly enough, when it came time for Janine You've Changed to actually address her new look, it was what I'd kinda call an ugly version of her original one. You'd think since this was the episode to call out the changes, they'd have left the changes more blatant, at least at the beginning of this episode, especially keep her in those safe for children rounded glasses. Now, the story of this episode was that Janine's appearance kept changing because she had an evil fairy godmother altering it for her as she desired to be more attractive to Egon. So to be more attractive, she had a less attractive redesign? And considering they actually went on dates and stuff before, and not so much after the tampering, I don't think I'd really say this was working. I'm pretty sure Egon was more into the original you, Janine.
Well, Janine and Egon could have had a baby.
Yeah. Now, there's something we should have explored.
Face is still too sharp. My eyes are too close together.
These problems Janine mentions about her appearance here were actually direct quotes from the notes Straczynski got back from the network, which is pretty great. I love when there's an extra meaning behind lines like that. But it's especially weird that once Janine realizes she's been tricked and rejects this evil fairy godmother, she doesn't change back. So even though the moral of the story is to be yourself, it kind of falls a little flat. That said, this episode should have brought about at least some positive changes to the character, however, nothing really stuck. And Janine 2 here just kind of fell back into the overly soft, bland thing she had become.
Slimer should be more of a character. He should have more of a leading role on the show because kids like that kind of thing. What's your homework on that? Can I see your data? Can I see your research on Slimer? And they, of course, didn't have any. They were just speaking extemporaneously, but somehow it now became Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters.
Slimer's role in the show being expanded the way it was is kind of the perfect example of something being done to death. It's perfectly illustrated, too, in the writer's guide Straczynski wrote for the show, where it said Slimer should be used sparingly. This kept the Slimer interactions better paced for the most part, and you could actually have some episodes that didn't even have Slimer show up. But if you look at the series Bible after Straczynski had left the show, it says the exact opposite. Cram Slimer in everywhere. They basically acted like the stupid kid's attention would be lost if Slimer wasn't on the screen constantly.
What's on the tube, Spud? Aw, come on, Slimer. Cut us a little slack, will ya? We couldn't take you on this run.
You know we love you, Slimer, but you're just too little to go on these big jobs.
Yo, Slimer. Brought you a surprise. Triple caramel crunchy. Your fave.
I liked Slimer alright as a kid, but my favorite character was Peter, so I was always more on his side when he was getting angry at Slimer. And I really didn't need Slimer on screen all the time to be entertained, and as the show proved, it is a very poor decision to devote so much of the show's time to him, and they refused to take the hint.
Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters!
Me!
Obnoxious!
My theory on Slimer was that a little Slimer goes a long way. So I tried to always say, use him minimally to good effect, not maximally no effect. If everything is funny, nothing is funny. If everything is scary, nothing is scary. If the show was all Slimer, it's nothing. So when they brought Slimer to the foreground and made it Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, the ratings dropped. And the attention dropped. The movie wasn't called Slimer. And I think by putting him in front of it, it lost a lot of the adult audience that had shown up for the original series.
It's like the stupid network executives and the Q5 morons could just not get it through their heads that the show had more of a broad audience and wasn't just a kid's show, and it actually worked like that. There's a reason why the show became a hit at first, and then the audience dropped off after the meddling. So, Slimer just started talking full sentences and would hijack stories and a lot of episodes, which was really reflective of the more simple-minded attitude towards the show and its new name.
How about analyzing this?
That's the second largest egg I've ever seen.
Second largest?
Pipe down, man.
Yeah, up now, man. Oh, Slimes, don't fill me out.
The Ghostbusters started becoming secondary characters in their own show.
Hold your fire, guys. Wait till you get a clear shot. We don't want to hit the little spud.
Ghostbusters Central. What's that, sir? Repeat that.
And as if that wasn't enough Slimer, they started airing a Slimer show as part of the Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters hour-long block. These were meant to be more slapsticky Looney Tunes style adventures starring Slimer. The main plot of them was this stupid scientist, actually named Dweeb, would run around trying to catch Slimer. So Slimer had his own show. He didn't need two. This stupid Dweeb character from the Slimer show even crossed over to a few Real Ghostbusters episodes as well. And despite the Slimer show having a different style and the human characters not having as many fingers, Dweeb's design was not altered to match. However, this was kind of appropriate since he was a jarring, unwelcome intrusion to ever show up in the Real Ghostbusters episodes. And despite watching some episodes during the Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters era, I really don't recall ever watching the Slimer show. I guess that was even too much for me back then. Slimer became so focused on and irritating, you just wanted to see the Ghostbusters get sick of him too and bust him.
Excuse me.
Ray, throw the trap.
But of course, no one was allowed to be mean to Slimer anymore. He was the star. It was actually stated in the series' new Bible that there would be no more Peter getting mad at Slimer. Everyone pretty much just adapted Ray's personality when it came to him, which is, I love Slimer. Which is funny because Q5 actually suggested they drop Ray entirely from the show as he was pointless. Apparently. Yes, they actually told them to drop Ray's stance from the show as he didn't appear to serve any purpose.
He's out cold.
Here, are you gone?
Thank you.
I can only imagine Dan Aykroyd would have loved that, as Ghostbusters was his baby, and he was the one from the cast who actually watched the cartoon quite a bit. Maybe it's because they basically wanted to turn the rest of the cast into a bunch of Rays with a really happy attitude. They didn't think the one who was originally that type of character was needed. However, everyone on the show's side pushed back on this amazingly asinine attempted sabotage, and the Real Ghostbusters at least never suffered the stupidity of dropping Ray from the show. What the show did suffer was the stupidity of the new Peter Venkman.
Lorenzo Music was my first choice because he really gave it a kind of low-key, dry quality that you would get out of a Bill Murray take. One of the big problems with Lorenzo was he'd been around quite a bit. So you started to hear his voice a lot in commercials and the rest, and that bothered Ivan a bit. And Bill Murray just come down one day and said, why don't you use my voice? He said, I can't do the show, but have someone do me. And immediately that's why we changed it.
Apparently, we lost Lorenzo Music on the Real Ghostbusters because of Bill Murray. I love you, Bill, but fuck! This was the change that slapped me in the face as a child, as I was such a big fan of the Lorenzo Music take on Venkman.
Lorenzo was replaced by Dave Coulier. We had a lot of fun with him, but Lorenzo was missed.
Dave Coulier's Peter Venkman. I believe there's a clip from the show that perfectly sums up this version of the character.
Hi, kids. I'm Venko the Clown.
This stupidity right here. This is exactly what Peter Venkman turned into once the voice was switched over to Dave Coulier. Now, I can't place all the blame on Dave Coulier. He came in and did his Bill Murray impression to questionable degrees of success, which is exactly what they had asked of him. That said, I hate with a passion the Dave Coulier Peter Venkman! The charm, the wit, the interesting character, all gone.
I hate that!
The only thing apparently needed for this badly written incarnation of Peter was being a doofy-ass, loudmouth moron.
Great, Slimer's somewhere on the other side, and here we are, a bunch of fluffer-nutters.
Fluffer-nutters?
Weird.
Yeah, I feel like a smurf.
Who is that? That's not Peter Venkman! Who is that?
Hi, kids. I'm Venko the Clown.
Oh, right. Peter Venkman, the real Peter Venkman, would never talk like this moronic buffoon.
Short, simple, to the point. I like it.
This change bothered me so much as a child, I would actually modify episodes that I still liked in my head to still being Lorenzo Music ones. I remember liking the episode Flip Side because the Ghostbusters go to an alternate dimension where there are ghost versions of themselves that caught people instead.
Hello, People Busters.
People Busters?
No!
Well, they all went except Winston, 'cause he's the driver! Q5! But still, I like alternate dimension stuff like this, so the first time I went back to revisit this episode, I was rather horrified to hear,
Run, fly, or whatever it is we do now.
I had been so sure this was a Lorenzo Music episode, but I had managed to change this piece of history quite masterfully in my head. I was really quite impressed that Kid Me had been able to do this with a few episodes. Current me, not so much. I just got left with the unfortunate truth that these episodes weren't as fun as I had invented. Still, I consider Flipside a better episode of the bad version of the show. It's just, I wish I could have watched the Lorenzo music version I'd made up in my head. But, speaking of the flip side and switching characters' voices, ABC committed, well, I don't want to overblow this, but a crime against humanity when they actually took episodes from the first season and redubbed Peter and Janine's dialogue with Dave Coulier and Kath Soucie.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna sleep like the dead.
Possibly not the most appropriate metaphor, Peter, considering our line of work.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna sleep like the dead.
Possibly not the most appropriate metaphor, Peter, considering our line of work.
Goodbye forever, Slimer.
Can I see that? You can read this?
I'm a secretary. I can read anything.
Goodbye forever, Slimer.
Can I see that? You can read this?
I'm a secretary. I can read anything.
Don't say it, Egon. Let me. We're in trouble. Oh boy, are we in trouble.
Don't say it, Egon. Let me. We're in trouble. Oh boy, are we in trouble.
This is something I never suffered hearing back in the day, but my sincerest condolences to anyone who did. I can't imagine thinking you're at least watching a good episode only to have it tarnished like this. When the switch originally happened, it wasn't nearly as horrible as it got. Some of the Peter lines at first were kind of ones you'd hear and think, well, that was okay, but I can imagine it being funnier with Lorenzo music's delivery.
It's times like this that I wish I'd listened to what my dad used to tell me.
Yeah? What was that?
I don't know, I never listened.
I cannot pay you enough for your service, gentlemen.
We know, but you can try.
But of course, later on, you got lines like this.
You're beautiful when you're mad, fatso. Well, double the pleasure, double the fun.
I am the Napoleon of crime.
Yeah, and I'm the Caesar of salad. Any brilliant ideas? We're about to become otter chow.
It looks like we've been pulled into the spirit world.
In other words, that's a ghost.
Yes, Peter, that's a ghost.
You crazy bunch of knuckleheads. You really burst my bubble.
Which were just things I could never imagine him saying. This just got really depressing for me to watch.
Now let's take this puppy home.
How, Ray? The rudder's useless.
Hey, look on the bright side. We're alive, the traps are full, and the Coast Guard will be here in no time. As long as my drool doesn't sink the boat first.
And not only did Peter sound like a moron at this point, but he actually became too stupid to live, constantly trying to make asinine decisions and actively putting himself and his team in danger.
The EEG indicates high brain activity.
Hi. That thing's smarter than I am. Our TV has ecto-athlete split. Time for Dr. Venkman's miracle cure.
I said we make a run for it while they're distracted. Agreed. Go!
You'll never take me alive, coppers. Oops. Hold it. You didn't say Mother May I.
Peter, don't!
No!
You guys don't know what's going on, do you?
Whose side are you on? Ours or the ghosts?
One of those ghosts saved our lives, remember?
A lot of swell memories here.
Hey, less yakking and more packing, huh, guys? What is this? A Don King convention?
We have to observe certain safety precautions, Peter.
We're bleeding off the energy from these traps. You wouldn't want the moving van to hit a pothole and boom, take out a city block.
Why not? Save the mayor the trouble.
Peter, don't!
Come on, nothing's gonna blow up.
No. Oh, no. Don't do it. No.
I can barely explain how sad it was for me watching all these later episodes of the Real Ghostbusters that I never did as a child, because guess what? I grew bored of the show when I lost my favorite character and it became Slimer-centric.
He did a character, Winston, on the Real Ghostbusters, and I was Peter Venkman, which is Bill Murray, which was kind of, oh, cut it out, I'm serious, get out of here, Egon.
Cut it out. Seriously, Coulier? Cut it out? Is that what Peter Venkman says?
Cut it out! Oh, cut it out!
When watching these now, I actually came to the sad conclusion after sitting through so many of the later season Ghostbusters episodes that I didn't even remotely like Peter anymore. He had just drifted too far away from the character I loved. They also changed it so Slimer was his best buddy.
Slimer, you don't look too good. You feel a little colder than usual. Maybe you'd better kick back today until we need you. I'll make you some Mama Venkman chicken soup. Okie dokie?
Did Peter really have to make him soup? Oh, that couldn't have been Ray who made him soup because that actually fit in Ray's character. That'd be stupid. No, it's gonna be Peter because he loves Slimer. This is another reason, in addition to the oversaturation, why the Slimer bits stopped working. There was no conflict at all with him and Peter anymore.
Just let me blast them once. Is that really too much to ask?
I feel like Straczynski was actually making fun of this change in Peter in one of his return episodes, The Halloween Door.
Slimer, you're dead.
Oh, good observation, Peter.
Yeah, you heard that right. Slimer sarcasmed out Peter. Bringing up the Halloween Door, though, does lead me to the one thing that a lot of the earlier network episodes had, which was superior animation. There was just more money able to be put in these episodes, so a lot of the time the movement looked a lot better. And the Halloween Door, being the only primetime special the show ever did, actually had even more of a budget than usual and is the best looking episode in the series. Plus, it's a Straczynski episode, and he was allowed to do even more than usual due to the later airtime. So you got to see the Dave Coulier Venkman hitting on a woman for the first time. But who are we kidding? No woman's interested in that version of Peter. But the Halloween Door is a standout episode, even if I don't think I can say personally that I enjoyed as much as any of the ones from the Straczynski story-edited era. In later seasons, though, the animation started suffering despite the network money, probably because of cuts due to the lower ratings that they'd certainly earned with their stupidity.
Where's our stuff?
So then you got stuff like obvious freeze frames to cover for lack of animation, and spots with really, really choppy animation. What is that, like 5 frames per second garbage? Clothing would constantly change around despite characters not having changed their outfit, and some didn't have animation done for certain scenes, and they covered it with footage from way older episodes, which is pretty obvious.
Guys, check that out.
One episode is so badly inconsistent, I swear the animation was done by 2 different studios, and one shot was accidentally inserted twice in a row, but without all the elements complete the first time. Also, Ray got thinner because, I don't know, heavier people can't be Ghostbusters? Maybe this was a compromise. We won't get rid of Ray, but there will be a little less of him. I'd say this was some misguided health thing if the show didn't have Slimer eating everything all the time. Maybe that's it though. Ray just couldn't get any food anymore because Slimer was around now all the time. I love too that Ray was deemed unnecessary, yet they introduced Tully into the Real Ghostbusters only after the network changes. And while I liked him in the movie, the realization of this character in the show was particularly bland. He barely impacted any story he was in and just felt like another character the show wasn't going to do anything of significance with. Plots and creatures were never as complex as they used to be, and a lot of the time they just fell into dumb children's cartoon stuff instead of the once creepy things they used to be. And the shows started getting desperate towards the end and started having things that were references to other shows on the time, like Ninja Turtles.
There it is, dude. Our dream vacation spot. New York, the big pizza.
Epic! I'm fully ready for some New York pizza.
Pizza? We're gonna eat tons of pizza, right?
Most definitely, dude.
And yes, funny enough, that is Cam Clark voicing one of the not Ninja Turtles there. And then they had some even more overt Simpsons parody ghosts. This one just blows my mind that it could have even happened. It doesn't even seem right to me that the Simpsons were ever on at the same time as the Real Ghostbusters. Another noticeable thing in the two incarnations of the show is how much smaller the world felt in the post-network BS version of the show. Originally, there used to be quite a few things that just give you a feeling of the world around the Ghostbusters and how they affected it. So, you'd see them going in to bust a ghost that had caused a large disturbance, and there would be news coverage of it. Or just people they would run into. There was this one time the Ghostbusters were working a case, and Egon almost gets mugged.
Well, well. What's wrong, my man? You lose something? Hey, maybe we can help you find it.
I'm looking for a full torso ectoplasmic manifestation. Color green, no legs, spirit classification unknown.
Hey, we had him, man. Why'd you let him go?
Well, my dad told me never to mess with anybody weirder than I am.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I love the episode Roller Ghoster, which involved a plot where the Ghostbusters got ripped off by someone using their name and faces for a roller coaster.
Well, I've seen enough.
There was just a lot less of that later on, and it's a touch you really start to miss when it's gone. Then again, it's really all the touches and care to the real Ghostbusters that makes it a standout cartoon to this day. Of all the characters, I think Egon was the one who suffered the least in going through the transition. He is pretty much the highlight of a lot of the later episodes.
Just because why what?
You told me you cut the power on the transdimensional portal just because.
First of all, I would never cut the power on the transdimensional portal. Secondly, I would never say just because.
However, once in a while, they even managed to get Egon slightly off character, as there were a few times he had these decidedly un-Egon moments.
Any more suggestions?
Yes.
Things also got a lot less dangerous around the Ghostbusters universe, which really degraded the story quality as it hurt how much investment you could put into the plots. Like, take the proton packs. They used to talk about how dangerous they were and how shooting someone with one, well, it would be bad.
Egon, remind me, what happens if one of those beams hits us?
Our individual atoms go on separate vacations.
Which is kind of a stark difference to let's shoot Egon forever.
Hold it! Cease fire! Egon's too close!
Yeah, just keep killing Egon there, guys. Really hard to stop firing your proton streams once you realize you're busting your buddy's butt off. Then, of course, there's the ghost trap, which is something that I do believe catches ghosts. Therefore, it's something that is sort of dangerous for Slimer to be around. There were a few times originally where Slimer had to do something with a trap, and he had to make sure to brace himself after, or he'd get sucked in. So, what did they do later? They made it Slimer's job specifically to open the trap. How completely ass backwards is that?
Bravo! Go for it, Spud! You got it, Peter! Come on!
let's not forget that you're not supposed to look into the trap because it would suck out your soul, right? Nope! The reason you don't look into the trap is because it'll teleport you to the 50s!
And that's all the news on April 10th, 1959.
Of course. That makes too much sense. I'm amazed Egon's head didn't explode in this episode due to the lack of logic on that one. Well, maybe his brain did at the very least. Now, what's one of the sillier things the network could try to do to wimpify the show about Ghostbusters? I suppose they could try to pretend that the ghosts aren't ghosts. Yeah. They actually decided children couldn't handle ghosts that were people who died anymore. So ghosts had to be more creature-like all the time, and references to them ever being someone who died had to be dropped. I can tell you that when I watched this show as a kid, I knew what a ghost was. I mean, you don't need to go into explicit detail about their deaths or anything, but there's never anything wrong with how the show handled mentioning that some of these ghosts used to be living people at one point. I mean, the show's called Ghostbusters. It's in the damn title. If the kid can't handle what a ghost is, they probably shouldn't be watching Ghostbusters. It's really sad to see such a great show get drugged down because of the stupid network BS and an idiotic group that decided there was a specific formula to make children's programming work, which only served to rip out the soul of the show. I would recommend any episode of the original run of the first ABC season and the syndicated package. Now, there are some dumber plots in some of those, but even still, any of those ones have the superior humor to make them still an enjoyable watch. There's only a handful I can really say are worth it to watch later on, as they usually didn't rise very far above stupid children's show. The main three that I think did were Flipside, The Halloween Door, and Janine, You've Changed. The rest, unless you want to watch something vastly inferior, you can skip. It's hard for me to even consider the Real Ghostbusters post the ABC Q5 interference to be the same show. Watch that if you want to see how well a network can screw something up that was working. Watch the first season and the syndicated episodes if you want to see it done right.
Let's try that floater.
And your little dog, too.